All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce my next guest, actor, voiceover artist, writer, seen him in Scrubs, Robot Chicken, Forrest Gump, the voice of Woody, and everything but the movies of Toy Story. Interesting story there. Can't wait to dive into it. Please welcome to the show, Jimmy Hanks. Hey,
Hey, hi.
how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
James, I came across doom scrolling on
Doom scroll.
TikTok and stuff. We're just scrolling. It came up. There was a thing of you, a video of you talking about how you do the voice of Woody
Hmm.
and I was like, oh my god,
Hmm.
mind was blown. And then you dig in, you see like Tom Hanks talking about it on some shows, and he seemed really proud of the fact that he's like, "Oh yeah, no, that's my brother. That's my brother
Yeah.
Jim." Before we get into that, because I know you've done that, you've done tons of other voiceover work, you've done a bunch of acting, writing. Is this the path you've always wanted to? Did you always want to be in entertainment? Was this your
No,
dream from a childhood?
no. Shui, before I moved to LA, I had met my wife and soon to be, unfortunately, ex-wife. We are separated now, which is a whole nother story. But I watched her audition and stuff like that up in Sacramento. I was really turned off by the whole thing. And I didn't, it was very, I thought it was very, it wasn't merit based. It's kind of like who you knew, who your friends were, things like that. And I'd watch her audition, and she, granted, it's not exactly subjective, but I watched her and I thought she was by far the best thing up there. And I don't feel like I was looking through rose colored glasses or anything. I was just watching what they were doing. And I saw a lot of weird things that I didn't really like. And then we decided at one point she wanted to make a go at it professionally, and we came down here after thinking about several other places, and I kind of got sucked into it. I remember what really hooked me was that I got into a good acting class, and the first time I did a scene, they turn down the lights, turn them back up, you do a scene, and they turn the lights down, and then the lights come back up, and then you were critique. And I remember doing that and getting a nice round of applause, and just being so jacked to be doing the concentration level and everything. And I thought I did a pretty reasonable job the first time. And I went, oh, now I get it. And I was hooked. I'd also, growing up, I did a lot of sports. And there was definitely a similarity between performing well on the field or the court or whatever to doing a scene and getting that reaction from people and the commitment and the concentration it takes to do it. And then boom, you're done and you go, oh, cool. You get to think about what you did and people, so I would just got sucked into it. But I did not move to LA thinking that I was going to do that. I really thought I was just going to wait tables while my wife tried to get her, her feet in the door. And then suddenly, I was doing it too.
What year is this roughly?
1988.
1988. Okay. So was the fact that you were kind of staying away from it and just kind of watching your wife at the time do it because your brother is Tom is in that industry, and were you just also kind of just didn't want to get
Well, I think for us at the time, neither one of us thought that, Tom was going to be a gateway at all. But it was that we knew somebody who had cracked the nut. And I knew somebody, so I knew that it was possible, or that we knew it was possible. I think that's one of the things that so many people who look at Hollywood go, "Oh my God, it's like there's no way you can do it," and it's not true. You just got to come down and commit and just and just never give up.
put the
Um,
time in, work your butt off?
yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to, like anything. My acting teacher at the time, who retired, he retired on at the beginning of the pandemic. I think he actually liked that. Said, "Okay, guys, we'll be back," and then we never heard from him again. But he often talked about or compared acting to sports. You don't just go out and start doing it. You have to learn how to do it first, and then you have to keep training and keep training and keep training and keep in shape. It's very similar. It's like if you take a few months off Like if you go, you're in acting class or whatever, and you take a few months off and then come back and try to do, you're really rusty. It's weird how rusty you can get in, a week or two or months or whatever. So it's very similar. You have to kind of keep everything oiled and limber and loose. And so it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, I get that. I've done stand-up comedy for
Oh,
a
have you?
couple of
Okay.
decades and a little less since the pandemic, but when I do go back, it takes me it seems like the first show was good because my brain is like, all right, just go for it. You got nothing to lose. And then it takes me a few minutes to kind of settle in. And by the fourth show, I'm like a little bit back to where I was.
Yeah.
Whereas like you're right, when you're working off the muscle memory and building on that and just keep doing it week after week after week after week, show after show after
Mhm.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, you start really honing the timing, and you're able to really work the nuances out that a lot of people don't really even know are there, but that's what separates the wannabes from the bees. It's making it look easy, which takes a lot of training and a lot of hard work.
What's your focus these days? Is it mostly writing? Do you still try and
Mostly writing. I still get acting gigs here and there, and not so much voiceover because the voiceover industry has really it's gone through a huge change in the last decade. Most, like broadcast television is not nearly as powerful as it used to be. So there's not a lot of money being put into commercials. And also most commercials now are non-union when I'm a member of the union. So I kind of like have to not do them. And they also just don't pay very well anymore. A few years ago, I really came to the realization that I'd always known that my being in front of the camera is difficult because I look and sound like a guy who's very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for?
well known?
Well known, successful. That would be the good word. It's very successful. I got a few things here and there, but I remember when I was really doing commercials, I started hearing things like, yeah, Jim's good, but it's really distracting how much he sounds and looks like his brother. And the few things that I did, I would see online, like, what's going on? Why is Tom Hanks doing Volvo commercials? It's like, is he that hard up? What's going on? And then in 2016, my mother passed away. And for her memorial, we did this big thing at the local, there's a theater in my hometown that we did it in. And my sister couldn't make it. So Tom paid for somebody to videotape the whole thing. And it was a really nice memorial. And it was the first time the following year, the anniversary of my mother's passing, I watched it for the first time. It was the first time I'd ever seen he and I on camera in the same lighting situations. And he hosted the thing and I talked at the very end. And when I got up there and I literally said out loud as I'm watching this going, holy crap, it's distracting to me. And I watched it, I finished it, grabbed my phone and I called my agent and I said, okay, I told her what I'd just done and said, I see it. Don't put a lot of energy into this. I get it. My becoming, hugely successful on camera is doubtful, and at the time I was already writing and stuff like that. So I don't put a lot of energy into it anymore. When I write stuff, I definitely look for little parts in it that I can do so I can, keep qualifying for my medical insurance and stuff like that. I don't really feel anymore anyway that I'm going to have this, that I'm going to be terribly successful in front of the camera. And that's fine. I'm good. I'm good with that. I can make a living and I like writing and, and I don't feel like anybody is going to be distracted by the fact that I wrote something, because they'll be watching a movie that maybe I'm in it, maybe I'm not. It's not like they're thinking of Tom the whole time. They're watching a movie that I wrote. So,
Well, maybe you should just tell Tom, hey, Tom, you had your run. Time to sit out for a little bit. It's old Jimmy's
yeah,
time right now.
no,
Jimmy's time shines. Jimmy's time to shine.
we've had conversations about retirement and he's going, well, why would I ever retire? I love what I do. Okay, fine. I remember several years ago when his son Colin first started. And I think I was reading something about Orange County. And in the review, they were talking about him and said, yeah, and some of his mannerisms remind me of his famous dad, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of distracting or what. And I was going, God, man, just give the kid a break. God, he doesn't look that much like him. But luckily, Colin has gone on to be quite successful in his own right. So I'm really happy for him. And I think people just got used to it. And he doesn't look that much like him. Or
He looks
sound
like
that
a
much.
son would look like his father.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that kind of thing.
I think early on there were some mannerisms and how he spoke a little bit. I think he probably saw those too and went, oh, I'm not gonna phrase anything like that anymore. So
I guess it's just the genes are too strong. Maybe you guys should do something where you're brothers.
we have talked about that, and I think that could happen. That could happen. It would have to be something cool. I don't know. I would definitely do that. And we've talked about it. Something comes up like that and it goes forward, you say, hey, yeah, maybe you should talk to my brother Jim about playing my brother.
Or maybe his brother Jim should write something.
I've thought about that too. Yeah.
That would be cool.
We'll see.
You got to play into it.
That's right.
If it's distracting, no one's going to be distracted when you're his brother.
Right.
And then maybe then you outshine him in that. And then everyone's like, oh,
that's a challenge.
Tom. It's like, I know.
To outshine a 2 Oscar winner. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of him winning an Oscar, but you're running. You're the one. Sometimes you just got to run, which is, again, playing to the strength, not distracting because everyone literally thought it was him. But also tell me if this is accurate. And because this I found, it said in 1995, a current affair revealed Tom had created the mannerisms for Forrest Gump based on the mannerisms created by Jim for the role of Jeter in one of your first roles.
That is not true. Yeah, I remember that whole thing coming out, and no, that wasn't true at all. It was odd that, because I had done it, I think, shortly before, but no one had seen it. And then it started getting a little play, and it wasn't. There was a whole thing too where they were saying that kind of a different version of that story was that Tom's younger brother, me, was developmentally challenged, and he got his mannerisms from me as a mentally challenged person. I hope that wasn't the case, but
doesn't appear to be.
No, it's people print whatever they can to get clicks and reads and whatever else.
Well, that's why I asked. Because if it was true, I was gonna be like, someone knows you and Oscar. No, is that what happened? Like with the run, where where Tom's like, well, my brother looks like me.
Yeah, no, he suggested it, and he had a really specific run before the movie was shot. We went up and did a screen test up at Will Rogers on the polo field, and they brought up a camera and everything, and they had hired this guy who was a college distance runner, and he was like really highly ranked. He couldn't do the run, because he had trained all his life to run really specifically and efficiently. He couldn't do it. But it was really, it was really a Hanks thing. Okay, you're going to do this with your arms and stick your butt out. Okay, sure. And, I could do it. Tom could do it. This guy couldn't do it. And he knew it too. He was a really nice guy. He's going, I can't do this now. That was the only time I saw him. When they were doing it, they flew me all over the country, and I got to run in some really cool places. And it was a whole separate unit. And while I wasn't, they would fly me every weekend somewhere. Like it was up to Maine and Vermont, and so anyway, so they flew me around all over the place. We went to Montana, ran through Glacier National Park and a bunch of different places. During the week, I was with the production, Beaufort, South Carolina, where they were shooting where the mama's house was and a bunch of stuff like that. I hung around for the week, bored out of my mind. So it was cool. It was fun. Met a lot of great people, and it was really cool. And I said this to Tom. I said, it was really cool to be a part of something that was so iconic. People really kind of felt that there was something really special about it while they were making it. And it was really an amazing production. Bob Zemeckis is a super nice guy and super talented, and it was very cool.
That's one of those movies that was one of the movies that we watched with our kids. We're like, you guys got to watch this movie. This is just a great, great movie. It's an amazing scene too. Like, awesome that you got to be. Did you get to hang out with Tom though? Was he there? Because this was just you being him, except for maybe like the Buford scenes, like when you're by.
Well, I did get to hang out with Tom a bit, because I would hang out in Buford and go to the set and watch them do stuff. The only time that Tom actually went with us was in Vermont. I wasn't there in Monument Valley where when he turns around. I really wanted to do the football scenes, but Tom was going, no, 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 I want to do the football scenes. And I'm going, damn you, man.
Stop.
And he was sick as a dog when they were shooting those. He had a flu when he was shooting the football scenes and just powered through it. I still didn't get a chance. That's how much he did not want me doing it. I'm sick, but Tom's not going to do it. No way.
Like, Jim, you got to run. You got to run.
Yeah. So whenever I watch the movie and that sequence comes up, I'm going, me, Tom, me, Tom, Ma, Tim.
You're probably one of very few people that would be able to even pick that out.
Well, if you look at it, my thighs were a lot thicker than his.
I did notice that. No.
Oh, that's thank you.
No. Watching the movie next time, I'm like, what's wrong, Jeff? It's like, oh, look at the thighs.
It's pretty much if you can't see his face, it's me. If he's running into running towards camera, has any lines or anything like that, if you can see his face, it was really fun. It was really, it's interesting to look back on it, and I can remember where we were and what was going on and what they were asking me to do and stuff like that. So it was really cool.
It's an amazing movie, but just the fact that it was one of your brother's Oscar roles, but Zemeckis is just incredible as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just to be able to work with him, just be part of that, like you said, must have been just so amazing.
Yeah, Bob's a really nice guy. He's I met through Tom. I've met worked with Bob a little bit, and I've met Spielberg and a few other people. Like Bob and Steven Spielberg are just really, really nice people. When you're hanging out with them, it's just they don't want to be. They're not. I'm so and so. They're not doing that. They're just really nice, very successful people who are, I think, feel really fortunate to have what they've had. I don't see any huge egos or anything. Same with Tom. Tom is very, very, he knows he's the luckiest guy in the world.
He seems to enjoy and appreciate all he has from the interviews. Let's talk about the Woody voice, since we're on the Tom train for a second. So when I saw a video of him, he was saying it was what was that? The guy overseas, that talk show, Graham Norton. Thank you. And he was like, "Nope, that's my brother Jim." And it was like, but the way he said it, my reaction to that is like, wow, what an unselfish, giving person, because he was just so excited that opportunity that his character created for you, and that was just something that you could do, and he just seemed so proud and happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've thanked him for it many times. I mean, I've been doing it now. The first toy I did I went into a studio and did it before the movie came out. So what was that, 95 or something like that? So I probably walked into a booth in late 94 to do it. And I've been doing it ever since for 30 years. So it's pretty crazy. It didn't really hit me until about 2 or 3 years ago when we were, kind of going, oh, how long you been doing it? Oh, 27 years? Wow, that's crazy. But to do any character that long. I just did had a couple of gigs for them. What was it? Just last week. Step in and, I know the character. I know I've done this line 1,000 times. And, I don't know how many times I've said there's a snake in my boot, which actually it's snake in my boots, which is weird. It's great. It keeps me
like 29 years or so of doing the same character. So if you ran all your voice of Woody against all of Tom's, I mean, just in terms of smushed it all together. But I mean, I've imagined like over 29 years and everything you've done, you might have actually voiced Woody more than
I
brother.
probably have. This last August, I did, for the first time, I did the D32, the Disney convention thing. Was in the room, and we kind of did a session in front of a couple of thousand people. The guy I work with, his name is Ben Hoppy, and he's a Disney character voice director, and I work with him all the time. And he was running the thing, and he asked me, how many sessions do you think you've done? And I went, I have no idea. And it was like 367 or something like that. I was like, holy crap. And some of them I know are long, some of them, sometimes I can walk in and do a session in 10, 15 minutes if it's only a couple of lines. And then there are other times where it's multiple sessions and I'm 4 or 5 hours, depending. I'm usually good for about 4 hours. And then Woody is all about yelling. So it's pretty taxing on my voice. I usually walk out, sound like Lauren Bacall by the time I'm done with my session.
How long does it take your voice to recover?
Sometimes a couple of days. This one last week was a particularly rough one. I had to really talk very quietly for a couple of days because it really had put a lot of stress on it. Because there's a lot of really, yeehaws and a lot of yelling, and Tom chose to make him a very loud character, so now we both suffered because of that.
Well, I think I would have Toy Story Mania on the Wii, so that would have been you voicing that video game. But you did Toy Story Mania too at the parks, right?
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a multiple session one, and I think the first 2 sessions I went in and they were going, okay, you're talking to like a 2-year-old, and because you're giving instructions to a 2-year-old. So they had me really like talking down, like, okay, everybody, we're going to be doing it. And it just wasn't working. And in the 3rd session, I said, we were talking and trying to do it. And I kind of raised my hand and they said, yeah, Jim, what's going on? I said, can I say something? And I said, yeah, sure. I said, I think the thing about Woody is that he never talks down to anybody. He's like everybody's favorite teacher. He talks to you like a person. And they went, oh, okay, cool. Let's try that. And I did the entire ride in 45 minutes from once we went to that. And they went, that's what it was. We were going in the wrong direction. You were right, Jim. That was a particularly fun session. And that one, I don't always get to work with the actual Pixar people, but the Pixar people were there, and they are a cut above. When you're working with them, you go, oh man, these people have taken this whole thing to a whole different level, and they're so cool and fun to work with. And they're the only people I've ever worked with where the director doesn't sit behind the glass in the control room with everybody else and then pushes the button and goes, Jim, he actually sits in the room with me in a chair and directs me right there, and then sits down and says, okay, go ahead. When he needs to talk to somebody in the control room, that's when they're pressing the button to respond to him. I've never had that where the director sits in the booth with you or the studio with you. I think that's another reason why they're so great, is that they kind of literally don't want that barrier between them and the actor. I really enjoy working with them. Their writing is always amazing. They're so, like we were saying earlier, it's about finding all the nuances, and they work on it so much. You don't even realize how good they are. You watch any of their movies and you go, oh my God, that's so moving. But they really stress the details.
Pixar's got to be, if you lined up all their movies and compared it to any other studio, their hit ratio in terms is just their quality amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, I remember we just rewatched A Bug's Life, and I remember seeing that when it came out and going, "Oh, it wasn't that good. It wasn't that strong." But the animation was a little funky. It was a little simple. But man, the story is fantastic and so timely to, there's a whole speech that Kevin Spacey does, which he didn't he didn't age well. But he has a whole speech about how the powerful have to keep the population in control, because if the population rises up, there's so many more of them than there are of us. You go, wow, that's really an amazing thing to be hearing nearly 30 years later.
I love that speech. I love it. That's when he throws the one seed at the guy and then unleashes them all. It goes, because if they knew that they were more powerful than us.
Right. And they're all listening to it and they're all looking at each other going, oh my God, he's right.
I love Bugs Life. The funniest thing about Bugs Life is the kids would watch it when they were really young. And the only thing they walked away with, there's a little play that they do where they go, die, die, die.
That's the thing about not Bugs Life, but Pixar in general. They are so good at making a movie that little kids can watch over and over and over again. And they could, like, if a kid watches Up and then watches it 25, 30 years later and realize, oh my God, the first 20 minutes of that movie rips your heart out. They don't even, it goes right over their head. It's just a sweet, the movie, the music is nice and everything, but holy crap, that movie just ripped my heart out. It's, and then it gets into the adventure of it and then comes back to, here's this man who's now, trying to move on from a great life that he already had. And he's finding something new and great too, but just different. It's great. I love, I could talk Pixar all day long.
There was a time where there wasn't an opening night of a Pixar movie that I didn't go see it. I loved all those. I remember seeing Toy Story because it was so revolutionary at the time, because that was like the first one. And it was just so amazing. And just the whole idea of your toys talk when you're not there. And it was just...
I remember when Toy Story 2 came out and everybody was kind of going, oh man, sequel. And that was when most sequels from Disney went straight to video. And it came out and everybody's kind of going, oh God, sequels are never as good. I thought Toy Story 2 was better than Toy Story 1. The Sarah McLachlan song, talk about ripping your heart out, about a toy. Just like, it was amazing.
With Jessie and all them,
and describing how she her human or whatever, or in a box and all that kind of stuff. It was amazing, and they've done such a good job. I thought 4 was a good wrap up. I'm a little surprised they're doing a 5, which incidentally I guess I had
more work for you.
Oh, yeah. Well, like last week. Yay. Thank you. I guess it hadn't actually officially been announced. And I was doing another podcast with somebody and I didn't know it hadn't been announced. And I mentioned it. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing all these things where people are going, and this podcast following Jim Hanks acknowledges that, blah, blah. And I go, oops, sorry. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that.
Can you acknowledge Toy Story 6 for me, just so I can get something out there? No,
I hear.
I hear. I feel like sometimes they do the sequels and stuff like that to keep it relevant at the parks as well. Like
possibly, yeah.
I mean, there has to be something to that where as long as it's kind of fresh in the minds.
I think there's an algorithm with popularity and merchandise and everything else, which was, from my understanding, why it took them so long to do an Incredibles 2, because the merchandise wasn't as popular. But after a while, they just kind of went, well, and I loved Incredibles. I think I've actually watched both of those movies a few times because I just think that's right up my alley. The superhero movie,
Incredibles is amazing.
I love the Incredible. And I love how, and you can't do it in live action as well, but the way Incredibles 2, which didn't come out till, I don't know, 10 plus years later, and it picks up exactly from the very second that the first one ends and just picks up and goes. It was great. I love it. Nobody aged a second, because you don't have to worry about that. It's awesome.
That is awesome. That is the beauty of animation. You mentioned working with the Pixar directors and all that. When you're doing Woody, the voice for any of these things, are there other people? Do the other actors do their own voices, or is there other people that do the voices of the other characters as well? And do you get to hang out with them and there's, that kind of thing?
I haven't. There was a time where many years ago, long time ago, 20 years ago, I did see the other actors doing it. There was one particular thing where we were doing it. It was back way back in the day for ABC Saturday morning stuff, and they wanted these kind of interstitial bumpers, and we did it. And that was the one time where everybody who was doing the voices was in the same room, and we were doing it like a reading, and it was freaking hysterical. My favorite part of that was that they had expanded on the shark, in the first movie where, hey, have you seen my hat? And the shark comes up and goes, hey, I'm Woody, Woody, Woody. And, give me that. They expanded that character. And what they did was they got a guy who could do Robert Shaw from Jaws doing the voice of that. And there's he's telling stories around a campfire. Freaking go. You can find them online. They are hysterical. They're very short, but they are hysterical. And that guy would be doing it, and it was hard to get through a take because everybody would start laughing. But I used to hang out with the guy who used to do Buzz. His name was Pat Fraley, but he's not doing it. There's a new guy doing it. I haven't really met any of them. Usually come in, and most of the stuff I do is either for what I just did last week was for a new 16-inch figure, or I do the parks, or I do Leapfrog or things like that, and sometimes I've done several times I've had to do the Ice Capades, which is my least favorite because they make me sing, and I'm not a singer. I can put it on my resume. I have a few musician friends who are a little envious that I've been paid much more money than them for singing.
That's amazing. How much Woody stuff do you have in your house? Do you have a room with all the things that have your voice on it?
I haven't collected. No, I have a few things in storage. One of the things I like to do is when I ever get a piece of merch, something, I leave it in the box and I'll hold on to it because you'll get these every once in a while. You hear about a kid who has cancer or something like that. And so I'll hold on to them and then, sign it and send it to them, that kind of stuff. That's really fun. But I don't have a bunch of Woody stuff. One thing I did keep that I opened up the box was, I think it was the second or third thing I ever did. Again, it was a singing thing where Woody is holding a guitar. He'll put his hand over it and he starts singing, or he whistles. It's me singing, Oh, Susanna and things like that with new lyrics and stuff like that. I actually used that and I recorded it on one of my demo reels because I thought that would, here I am. Yeah, he can kind of sing.
Well, you can sing as Woody. Do you ever do Comic-Cons or anything? Because I imagine people love voiceover artists, and your Hanks and your Woody. Seems like that's a gold.
I've only done that one Disney convention. Yeah, Comic-Con would be so cool. I'd love to be involved, whether it was something I wrote or something, and go to Comic-Con. I don't really have a desire to go to Comic-Con as a civilian. I'm going to wait until,
No, you get a booth and people pay you a lot of money to have a signature and take your photo. These people make insane money. I'm not saying you need the money. I'm just saying
no,
it's quite a.
I need the money. I need the money.
People just line up, and I got to imagine people would bring in the video games to do that.
Yeah, I guess through a few people, I have been told that I have a bit of a fan base because of the video games. Kingdom Hearts was a big one, and I ended up doing quite a bit on that. The guy I did the misspoke about Toy Story 5, he was saying that, and I thought it was really kind of sweet, but he was saying that he felt like my voice was more identifiable as Woody because he grew up with the doll, with the figures and pulling that string all the time. He heard my voice more often than the movies.
Yeah,
because
that makes sense.
Because he had it all the time. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
cool.
saying I'm sure there's a lot of emotion tied to people realize, oh my God, that's because you find out and it's oh, it's not a secret, but I don't know if it's not a secret. It's not like everyone's talking about it. I think most people, they got you to sound like Tom Hanks, so they want people to, I think, assume it's Tom Hanks, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you would be awesome. I'd line up. That's all I'm saying. I'd do it. This is just for me. I'm just saying.
I'll put a reserve thing there for you. Reserve,
so,
Jeff.
Okay, there was one other thing that I thought was amazing. So being named Jeff, obviously, you can see Toys R Us being one of the greatest stores in the world growing up. Another famous, amazing voice, Jeffrey the Giraffe. So that look at I mean, look at speaking of Comic Con, you have Jeffrey the Giraffe in the right markets. I'm like, oh, which one do I choose? I don't even know. I'll have to get both.
As much as I love Woody, people ask me what's my favorite job I've ever had, and definitely Toys R Us was the best. It was so fun. One was, I had a couple of campaigns before that, which is, your voice of the product, whatever. Jeffrey was something where I got to perform and I didn't have to try to match Tom's performance. I just got to do it on my own. And I didn't care. Nobody cared that I sounded like him. And even some, I saw some buzz on the internet going, is that Tom Hanks doing the voice of it? They gave me so much freedom. What would happen is that, just out of common courtesy and professionalism, I would go in and start on a script and do it exactly as it was written. And one time we were pretty far into the campaign. I've been doing it for a while, and I did it like 3 times as written. And then the third pass, I threw something in. And the directors on the other line, it was a phone patch. They were, I forget where they were, mostly Chicago, I think. They went, okay, great. Okay, now, we were waiting for you to start adding stuff and improving. And I went, okay, so let me stop you right there. You want me to improv? And they went, yes, we really want you to improv. And I went, okay, heard. And so from that point on, and I remember one time I went in for, it was one of the radio spots, because I did both on camera and the radio spots. The radio spots ran much more. I went in, and on the script, it would have every sentence, every line numbered. And I remember it was just, it wasn't about sentence, it was just lines. And on line 17, all it was hyphens. And I was looking at it, and they were going, okay, Jim, we're going to, and I said, can I ask a question? Yeah. So line 17, do you want me to come up with something? And there's this silence. And then this click, going click. Yeah, we were kind of hoping maybe you could help us come up with something for that. And I went, okay, great. All right, got it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had some actor friends saying, oh man, you should never improv for commercials and stuff because you're just doing their job. And I'm thinking, 1, it's super fun. And 2, it makes me a lot harder to replace. I get to bring in my sense of humor and stuff. The one thing I remember, there was a commercial we were doing, it was with the animatronic Giraffe, which was super cool, by the way. I got to go into Stan Winston productions when they were building it. And it was super cool because then they had taken some of the stuff that I'd already recorded, and they had programmed in the mouth and everything. They're working on it, and here I am jabbering away on this 16-foot giraffe. And I got to go see it one time when it was in a store during one of the commercials, and that was really super cool.
Yeah. It's so cool.
And the other actors who were acting with the animatronic thing, found out who I was, and they went, "Man, that is really cool. That was super cool." I mean, I know it really is. It was just being able to have that much input was really, really great. I was always super excited about going in and working on those. It was just the most fun. I went in, there was a Toys R Us on 4th and Santa Monica in Santa Monica. It's not there anymore, unfortunately. But I went in and I bought a bunch of the plush Jeffries that you squeeze his ear and he says stuff. And I still have some of those. And I was giving them to little kids, somebody, 2-year-old I meet, or, new 2-year-old in the family, and they would get their Jeffrey. I still probably have like 8 or 10 of them because I don't know that many 2-year-olds, I guess.
You've done the voice on Robot Chicken. Robot Chicken seems like it'd be a really fun voiceover gig.
Really fun. They're really great guys. Seth Green is a super nice guy. He is small in stature and big in talent. Great. He's one of the best voiceover directors I've ever worked with. He's so articulate. with very, very few words, can really tell you exactly what he wants. And it's great. I really like working with him. I haven't been in it for a while.
And then the other funny thing, I want to talk about some of the stuff you've been writing, but did want to say one thing because I thought it was really funny. Scrubs, which is one of the best shows I think ever, and they're bringing that back. It was a funny kind of Dr. Turner to their Hooch character.
Yeah.
Very funny.
That was fun. That was fun. A weird little story with that, if you don't mind.
Love it.
The director of photography on that show, I walked on the set and I went, I recognize this guy. Where did I recognize him from? And I racked my brain. And I finally realized that he had done Steadicam on a pilot that I had shot in Orlando. And my part was, it took place in Universal Studios. And my part was, I was a manager or the boss of like the big heads and things like that. And he was just a local guy who had a Steadicam and everything. And then, that was many, many years ago. And then, he ended up being the director of photography on Scrubs. I'm in the middle of we're working on a scene during one of the cut, and, the director and people are talking. I just kind of went, by the way, to the director of photography, said, I worked with you once. And he said, really, where? He said, yeah, you shot this pilot I was in Orlando in Universal Studios. And he says, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the big thing on it was that Tom Hanks's brother was in it. And he said that, and everybody on the set were looking at each other. And I look over to, I don't know who I looked at, and I said, do you want to be the one who tells him? Because he obviously hadn't read the script or knew who I was. It was so funny because everybody on the set went, dude.
That's really funny.
And then somebody told him, I think the AC went, dude, that's Tom Hanks's brother right there. And he went, what? And everybody laughed at him because it was like, and I kind of went, I guess it's kind of why I'm here, right?
It's not a meta joke if it's not me.
Yeah, it was very meta. It was so strange how, I thought it was meta already, but to have it go that even farther meta was bizarre. Yeah, but anyway, it was a really nice experience. Zach Braff was really great, and Donald Faison. I ended up playing in a NBA Entertainment League. A lot of people from the industry was in it, and he was there. And every time I saw him, hey man, how are you? He's super nice. I'm always kind of blown away, even though I know I'm fairly easy to remember. But I'm always really flattered when somebody actually does remember, especially when they remember my name.
All right, and you're also an amazing writer. Besides all this that we've been talking about, I think you got a few things cooking. MIA, Mothers in Action, Black Like Me, and The Client List all seem to be about something real. Do you like focusing on that type of story?
I fell into, I would call nonfiction. When I started writing, I wanted to write science fiction and romantic comedies and, original stuff. And I totally fell into writing nonfiction. And strangely enough, I have done a couple of military stories. And I never thought that's where I would go. But I had this one project that a friend of mine, I have a really good rapport with these guys at Canon Cameras. One of the guys from Canon Camera calls me up and says, hey, I know this retired Marine colonel who wants to write about this division in World War II. Do you know anybody? He really wants somebody who was in the service. I helped him and I gave him some advice on where to find somebody. About 6 weeks later, he calls me back and says, hey, that none of this has worked out. Can you help me? And I said, I've been thinking about it and I'd like to throw my hat in the ring on this. And so I gave him some samples of my writing and we talked back and forth, via email and stuff. And eventually he said, okay. And I ended up writing it, and it ended up being called Semper Avante, which means always forward. And it's about the 10th Mountain Division who entered the war late in Italy, and they were mountaineers and skiers and all that kind of stuff. And so they had a really interesting history. And so I wrote this really cool, I was really proud of it, feature. Somebody had said, if you have you have an IP to go along with it. So he hired a person to write a book based on my script. And then they wrote a second book. And so all the characters that I made up in my script are in his book. He hired me to write it. It was the first time I'd ever been hired. And so I don't have any ownership of it. And now somebody optioned the 2 books to try to make into a miniseries. And I don't know what's going on with that. Actually, I reached out to him just this morning to say, hey, what's going on? And now I'm going ahead and taking the liberty to talk about it anyway. If for some reason the miniseries doesn't fly, I would love to be able to go, hey, to people in the industry going, here's this other thing. And it's a solid piece. I'm very proud of what I did with it and the characters I made. And it was an amazing experience. I wrote it, I think I finished it in 2014. So I got to meet some of the guys who were in that outfit. Most of them are already passed because they were in their late 80s when I was meeting them. Their story was amazing. Being able to sit and talk to these guys about this and, talk to people who were in World War II, and it's crazy. They are still stories that need to be told. And, in kind of World War II, especially, is almost its own genre. It's war with recognizable technology, but not the technology we have now, where you can have unmanned drones doing your fighting for you and all that.
Right.
I'm not taking anything away from the members of the service now. There's a tremendous amount of courage in the stories I was reading and hearing about. And I learned so much about World War II and this particular thing I'd never heard of. My research, which took like 6 months, was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Holy crap. I didn't know that. It was crazy how many things about World War II that we're still learning. And just the level of bravery that these young men had to do this. And literally when studying about the battles and things like that, just really how much of a world war it was. Practically everybody on this planet at that time was involved with the war. There's hardly anybody who wasn't. Like they had Brazilians on one side and, Peruvians and, it's like all these different countries that I didn't really even know were involved, and they were. I fell into that, and then I met the producer, writer of MIA, or Mothers in Action. I met him, bizarre, long story that I won't get into, maybe someday, maybe part 4 when I can tell you this story. I met him. When I met him, I thought we were meeting like, there's this possible project and maybe I'd get, 3rd Marine from the left or something like that. We talked for like an hour and a half. And then like the next week I get this email and he says, well, we've been talking to everybody involved and we'd like you to direct this thing. And I went, whoa, direct this thing? Well, hold on. Because I'd read the script. And good story, a little messy. But I was hearing my acting teacher say, never judge the material. If somebody wants to hire you as an actor, do it. It's better than waiting tables, blah, blah, blah. I went, okay. But then when he asked me to be a director of it, I went, okay, well, my relationship to the script changes. The script is a little messy. Ultimately, I did a page 1 rewrite of the whole damn thing. And he really appreciated what I did and tells me that the reason it's gone forward was because of that rewrite. And now the movie's gotten a little too big for me to direct it. I mean, far too big. And I also realized that the story is mainly it's his family. His father was a wing commander in Vietnam. Was killed in action in 1965. And most of the story, the last half of the story is about his mother dealing with his father being listed as MIA. As the whole project started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I've directed stuff, but I've never directed a feature, and I've certainly not directed a feature that's going to cost a minimum 10 million. And I started saying, well, don't keep pushing me as a director. Don't make that a deal breaker. And then eventually I started telling him, I don't think I should direct this. This should be directed by a woman because most of this thing is from her perspective. And so now that's where we're aiming. We're trying to get a woman, director. And so I've backed away, but I'm still really proud of what I've done there. And yes, there's a part in there, a couple of parts that I could play.
Of course.
To keep my medical coverage. That was my second foray into nonfiction. And then Black Like Me fell in my lap. That one, I don't know if you know the book.
I read the kind of synopsis, which I found
Right.
fascinating because I'd never seen one of those where it was like,
oh yeah, my agent sent you my pitch deck. Yeah.
The pitch deck. Yeah. It was fascinating. Yeah. It's like the opposite of that Eddie Murphy skit.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Where he goes as a white guy.
The book came out in 1960 or 61, and it's about a journalist, a white journalist. He's working for a black magazine in Texas. He keeps trying to get articles written, and the editors go, dude, you can't really, that's not the language they use, but he said, you can't really comment on the black experience being a white man. And he kind of goes, oh, well, I think if I become a black man, then I can. And so he dyes his skin and walks through the Deep South without changing anything. He doesn't change he doesn't change his name. He doesn't change his history. He doesn't change the way he speaks. He just is there. He comments on just how, especially in the Deep South, late 50s, early 60s, that, the second any white person saw him, they had an opinion about him. They hated him from sight. And he talks about that. And I just decided that his book can't be the screenplay can't be based on it. It has to be an adaptation. It has to be all of his words because his words apply. If anybody changes anything, well, certainly me being a white man, 60 years later, we run into the possibility of somebody saying, oh, you're being manipulative here. And if you take his words from 1960 and up until his death in 1980, and he was a civil rights activist for the rest of his life, you take his words and his observations, you can't, you're arguing with you're not arguing with me, you're arguing with the original author, John Howard Griffin. Right. It was really important to me. And so ultimately, every experience I've had so far with nonfiction has been different. And actually, every script I've ever written has a different set of circumstances. I've written sci-fi stuff where I was writing to specific people and only writing to what I knew I could get my hands on at the time. Every writing project is different in some way, whether you're working on it by yourself, what the plot is, or if you're working with other people. And I tend to work with a lot of other people, and I actually really enjoy it. But every example is different. Everybody works differently. And I find myself being forced to be very flexible, and I think I'm pretty decent at that.
Well, I'd line up to see any of those. They all sound amazing. And nonfiction, I think, has a certain allure to it. So I think
Black Like Me is just now starting to get out there. We approached one really prominent, and also we strongly believe it should be directed by a person of color. If you were to ask me to direct it, which has come up, I would say no, because then it would still be arguably manipulated by a white person. So we're looking at some prominent black directors or directors of color, and hopefully somebody will bite.
Awesome. So many great stories. I can't wait to watch any of these come to life. You're so awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. If you ever want to talk again, let me know.
I will do that for sure. Right. When Toy Story 6 comes out.
Tell you all the ins and outs.
Or rather 2 months before it's announced that Toy Story 6. Jimmy Hanks, thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Jeff. It was a pleasure speaking with you.